Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First things you want to do is to go ahead and loosen up the negative battery terminal. So that's a 10 millimeter I use to get that loose. Go ahead and pull it up and off and really move it out of your way and make sure it doesn't make contact with anything. So this is a pretty big battery, so you really want to move all these brackets and things out of your way to make it easier to get the battery up and out. So you definitely want to remove these support braces. There's two of them. So you want to remove the nuts, or the bolts rather, on both sides, and these are 13. I use a 13 millimeter socket. So go ahead and get that out of the way. There's one down here, so you want to use a long extension and a 13 millimeter socket to get that up and out. It is attached to some type of little retainer that wraps around this bracket, so go ahead and slide that up and out of there and get that out of your way. Okay, so now get the battery hold down. This is also a 13 millimeter, and pull that up and out and get that out of your way. And I believe this is, yeah, also 13 millimeter. Everything is 13 millimeter and 10. So there's the hold down there. Now you want to go ahead and get this battery fuse block slash distribution block. Get the cover off and then go ahead and disconnect these cables that's plugged in. And then at this point I just went ahead and loosened up the positive battery terminal, because you want to remove this whole fuse block. It's best to do it that way because of the size of the battery. So here I'm loosening up all of these cables here go into this fuse block, this distribution block. And remember the orientation of all this stuff. If you forget, refer back to the video. So now with the cables loose, I can go ahead and get it off. There's these little tabs there. You can see I'm pulling the tab off the battery. So you just want, they're like little hooks. So you just want to unhook it, unlatch it, if you will, off the battery, and go ahead and get that out of the way. All right, so now you can see the battery is free to come out. And like I said, it's a really big battery, so you kind of got to play Tetris a little bit to get it out. Okay, so here's the part number for the battery. These are the specs on the battery. You want to use those specs to replace the battery. Okay, so I got my new battery. As you can see here, I really want to get these cables out of the way. So I'm moving them out of my way because the battery is fairly large. So the more stuff you get out of your way, the easier it's going to be to maneuver this battery into this space. Okay, so once again, go ahead, play a little bit of Tetris to get this battery in. You see how I work the battery to kind of get it in. And you kind of have to play Tetris, to get it in. So once you get the battery in, first thing you're going to do is get it lined up right with the battery hold down. So I'm just making sure it's lined up right for my battery hold down. Alright, so here's my battery hold down, and go ahead and put it in place, and go ahead and get your bolt in there and run that bolt down. So of course you always want to start it by hand first before you snug it up to avoid stripping the bolt, because it is important to have a battery hold down for long battery life. So this is a very important step. And also you want to make sure the lip of the hold down is on the lip of the battery. So there's a shot of it there. You want to make sure you install it right. You really don't want to use power tools to install this. You want to put everything back together by hand, just so you could feel how tight you're taking it. So go ahead and get the hold down nice and snug and test it. Make sure the battery is held down nice and tight. All right, so I'll pop just the positive cap off. I left the negative on for now. All right, so let's get our power distribution fuse block back mounted on the battery. Make sure these little hooks or latches snap on the edge of the battery. And that's why it's important too to make sure you buy the right battery for this vehicle. Okay, so we got the positive on. And here I'm getting these other cables on. So you can refer to this to make sure that you get these in the right space. So there's 4, but there's only 3 wires. So they did leave one open just in case you're, installing some type of accessory. You could hook it there. So go ahead and get your cables back in the right place. You don't want them crossed and twisted. You want to make sure they go right back in the right place. Okay, so you want to get the nuts back on there. And again, you don't want to use power tools or anything like this. You want to just snug it by hand so you don't break anything. And these are 13 millimeter. I used a 13 millimeter socket to bust these loose. I believe everything is 13 and 10 millimeter that you'll need, of course, with a 3/8 drive ratchet and a couple of extensions. All right, so making sure I get the right orientation and get these plugged in. Can't really mess these up. One's large and one's small, but you don't want them to be too twisted up. So this is how it looks. Just make sure you get it hooked up right. All right, so again, snug them up by hand. You do want to get them nice and tight. You don't want these to lose contact. So you do want these to be nice and snug. So don't be afraid to snug them up, but without overdoing it. Okay, so go ahead and snug them up. And once you get them snugged up, that's pretty much it. You can tighten up that positive battery cable and then put the cover back on it. So right now I'm making sure that this positive is snug. And again, don't be afraid to snug this stuff up. All right, so go ahead and put your cover on. And I'm just verifying, making sure everything is tight before I finalize it with the cover. All right, so make sure your jump post is sticking up and out, and then put the cover over it. All right, so at this point we're almost there. We just need to get these brackets back in. Right now I'm trying to figure out which way this bracket goes in, and so it became pretty obvious which way it goes in. So I'm going ahead and getting that set down in place and get the bolt started. So you see I'm making sure it gets back into that little retaining ring that it sits inside of. And then I'm getting my bolt started. You can put your hand right under those hoses and you got plenty of room to twist that bolt in by hand. All right, so I left it loose so that when I get the top brace on, I'll have a little wiggle room, if you will, to get everything lined up. So don't snug that bottom brace down just yet. Make sure you get all of these bolts in before you start tightening things down. And I believe all of these bolts are the same exact size, so it doesn't matter. The top bolts, that is. The bottom bolt is the aluminum color bolt, and then these top bolts are black bolts. So make sure you put the right bolts. And then all the black bolts are the same length, so I don't think you need to worry about that. Okay. So I'm just getting them all ran down by hand. And I'll come back with the 13 millimeter socket and my 3/8 ratchet and snug it up. So I did use a long extension and snugged up that bolt down there, and then I came back and snugged these up. Again, these are 13 millimeter. All you really need to do this job is a 13 millimeter socket, a 3/8 drive ratchet, a 10 millimeter socket, and a long extension, and a small flathead screwdriver to pop that case off of the fuse block. Okay, so just about done. I'm gonna pull this negative cap off now and go ahead and fish my negative ground cable back out and get it up and on. Okay, got it on. And you do want to make sure you wiggle that thing all the way down and seat it on the battery well before you start to snug it up. So here, I'm going ahead and snug it up again. Don't be afraid to tighten this cable up. Don't go crazy, but it does need to be fairly tight. Alright, so it's snugged up. At this point, that's pretty much it. Just verify that everything looks good.